Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to do a plan with me. Here's some background information just in case you're not familiar. My name is Brienne Beebe. I am a high school math teacher and I teach geometry, general geometry, which is geometry but remedial, and I teach a college level calculus class. So today I'm going to walk you through my lesson planning process for all three classes. So for planning, there are two things that are key to making this a really easy and seamless process. The first is having a solid scope and sequence. Now, the scope and sequence takes time to develop. I started it, I created it, and every year I go back and I tweak it and update it. The other thing that makes this really easy is batch lesson planning. Obviously, I'm doing this at home right now and it's just for you, just so I can make this video. But normally this is all done during school and I'm not taking work home with me. It happens sometimes, on rare occasions, but like I said, very rare. Usually this is all done at school. So if you want to learn more about making your own scope and sequence that works for you, then you want to check out my Pre-Plan Your Year workshop. Throughout the workshop, I guide you into creating your own scope and sequence. I provide the template for you so you can fill everything in, and then it makes it so much easier when you have to lesson plan week by week, which I hope you're doing instead of planning day by day. Now, if you want to learn more about how to plan week by week or even unit by unit, then you want to know more about batch lesson planning. And I have a workshop for that as well. So the link to the Pre-Plan Your Year workshop and the batch lesson plan workshop are in the description box below. So here's where I start. I've mapped out all of my classes, geometry, general geometry, and calculus for the month of April. So I know what I'm doing each day, and this is all subject to change, but I like having this calendar because it's kind of like a scratch place to put my ideas and thoughts, and then I can change them around. So I'm actually doing my lesson planning in the GoodNotes app, so that allows me to annotate a PDF, and it's just nice and easy to make changes as I need. So I'm going to start with my geometry class. So I am planning for the last week of April right here, and I already have mapped out each topic that I plan to teach for that week in all of my classes. So I'm going to come over to my actual digital planner that I use throughout the year, and I'm just going to add that information on here. Okay, so I have the next week mapped out for all of my three classes. I made a small change from what I originally had on the calendar in my general geometry class. We were going to do the project these last 2 days, but we're actually behind in this class, which is unusual. So instead of starting the project, we're going to skip the project and go into our next unit. The other thing that I want to add in here is where I'm going to do any assessments. So in my calculus class, they have a test coming up after this week. In my general geometry class, there's a test during this week. And then in my geometry class, we are covering content, but in here there should be a quiz. So I'm going to add in that on Wednesday we'll do quiz review, and then on Thursday we'll have a quiz. And just thinking about the content that I'm teaching those days, that might change, but for now I'm going to leave it that way. So essentially the calendar is like my big overview of everything that I'm planning on doing, but then when I go to my planner, that's where I'm refining my plan and making sure that I really know what I'm doing for that following week. Once I have everything filled out on my planner, I go over to my computer, and that's where I'm going to actually type out my lesson plans. So I'll go through and do my plans one course at a time. Let's say I start with geometry. This is my lesson planning document. It's in Google Sheets, which is cool because then I can go back to any week in the school year, and each week gets its own sheet. So I'm going to go to my current sheet. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to move this to the front so I always have the current unit first. I'm going to rename this, and this will be 424 through 428. And then this particular week is going to start a new unit. So every time I start a new unit, I change the color of the sheet so I can tell the difference. So I'm going to go through the date. I'm changing every date to be the following week. Then I'm going to update my unit titles. So the previous week I finished one unit before starting the next. I'm going to delete some of these that I know are not going to be useful for the current week. And then I'm going to start adding in my lessons. So Monday I have chord theorems. Tuesday I have circle angles. Wednesday I have angle measures. Thursday I have segment measures. And then on Wednesday we have sector, area, and arc length. Then I'll go to my objectives and fill that in. When I fill these in, they all start out with I can. That's how my school likes to do it. Actually, I don't even think they told us we need to do it that way, but it needs to be like in student-friendly language. So I usually do I can statements. Now this is my scope and sequence, and again, it's in Google Sheets. So that means that every unit on here is its own sheet. So I'm in unit 9 because we are getting toward the end of the year. So on my scope and sequence, I have the topic, the relevant standards, the objectives, and then I have notes on my resources, or even just notes on how I like to split up the topic. So tangent and chord theorems is its own topic. And now I can see on here that my plan was to have the quiz in between tangent and chord theorems and the angles. So I might be able to change that. And this, honestly, I might just leave it for now and change my mind later. And we'll just see how I feel as we're teaching it. So the objectives here are to apply properties of lines tangent to a circle and to apply properties of chords. And on the previous Friday, we are doing tangent lines. So on that Monday, we're doing chords. So I only need that second part of the objective. And we also need to cite the standard. So I'll go over here, paste that in. And then I'm going to tag the standard in parentheses. And it's G-C2. I'm going to go ahead and do that for everything else here. So you really only need one standard per day, but some of my lessons do have multiple standards. So I might just combine some of these because for that one day we're going to do a few topics. That's just the nature of this unit that we are in. Circles, there's a lot of information to cover, but we can't get to everything, so we kind of combine a lot of stuff. So this one would be I can calculate the measure of an inscribed angle. And I'm going to add and polygon. And let me see what standard that was. Still G-C2. All right, then we have angle measures and segment lengths. Technically it's one topic. It's a lot going on in that one topic, so I split it up over 2 days. We do just angles one day and then just segments the next. That is again G-C2. So basically I have my whole scope and sequence mapped out already ahead of time, and I'm just copying and pasting. And the scope and sequence, I did not get to show this, but that's how I have my whole calendar filled in, and I know everything that I want to do throughout the month of April. Once April's finished, I'm going to actually go ahead and map out everything I plan to do for the month of May next. Okay, then we have arc length and sectors. I'm going to work on application, because deriving the formulas is not a whole lesson. Like, it's something quick that we do at the beginning and then we just go into applying. So we're gonna apply the arc length and sector area formulas, and this was G-C5. All right, next I'll fill in the connection or warm up. So usually it's review of the previous topic. So we'll have tangent lines review for Monday, chord theorems review for Tuesday. Actually, let me go back. I think I just call them tangent theorems. I don't want to be confusing myself later. Now, I was planning on doing the quiz on Thursday, so on Wednesday we would do a quiz review, and then the quiz would be our warm-up for Thursday. Then Friday we could do segment, actually we need to do angles. We'll do angles review. Now this week in particular, it's just heavy on direct instruction. So my activities that I have here, this is just how my district wants it. They want teacher activities and student activities listed separately. So it kind of, they ping pong off of each other. When I'm doing step 1, this is what my students are doing during step 1, etc. So I just have like this simple lesson format that I go through, and that just allows me to copy and paste it. And some days it might be a little bit different. Sometimes there might be a discovery, introduction to the lesson. Sometimes that would be part of the warm-up. It just depends. So I'm gonna leave it as is, just copy and paste that all the way through. Then my closure is usually going to be to recap the theorems or whatever properties we have learned about that day, And none of this has to be perfect. It just needs to make sense to me. No one else is actually looking at this. Now, in my district, what they do is if we get observed, then we need to submit our lesson plans like right away. So the idea is that we should always have our lesson plans prepared and available, but our administration is not actually looking at them until we have an observation. And our observations are unannounced walkthroughs. So they could happen at any time. So we just make sure we have everything that we need. Now, each day we have an assessment. If we're doing direct instruction, that assessment is usually independent practice. I should have found a more fascinating week to do this with, but we're doing a lot of work in our notes, like we're doing a lot of new topics here. So I build practice into the notes. So when it says independent practice and it looks like we're not doing anything, it's all built into the notes. So students are getting their practice from there. Now for my materials, I'll have the Smartboard, the Inspire, and then guided notes. For differentiation, I actually don't have students with specific IEP needs in this class. So I'm going to actually just leave that there as it is. We have differentiation for above level learners and then for the below level learners. Now, if I were using different materials, like if we had a practice activity, I would be using that in the materials as well. And now that I'm thinking about it, when I go on to do the other classes, I think it's kind of the same thing. We're not doing anything very exciting here. So my geometry lesson plans are done. I'll close out of that and scope and sequences. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing for my general geometry class. So I copy the sheet, I change its name. And so this process that I'm doing where I'm basically just doing the same actions, but for all my different classes, this is what batching looks like. So batching means I'm going to repeat the same procedure, but for multiple things. So in this case, it's for all of my classes. This just helps me stay focused and on top of everything that I'm doing. Let's see, now on general geometry on Friday, we learn about sequences of transformations, and then on Monday we're doing part 2. So I'm actually going to do a little bit of copy and paste. So this is day 2 of sequences. I'm going to copy the objective because the objective won't change there. And then my warm-up for that will be sequences review. And this is a different lesson structure that I have. So my general geometry class, we just take things slower. So I'll introduce a topic one day and then the following day we'll practice. So Monday is going to be a practice day, and this is what my other lesson structure looks like. I'm going to facilitate the independent practice. I'm going to answer the questions. Then we're going to discuss it all together. Our closure is typically just reviewing the most missed problems. And this is a graphing unit, transformations, so everything's done on a worksheet, like it needs to be paper and pencil. So that's there, my differentiation, I'm not going to go into. And then our materials, in this case, we are using a worksheet. The rest of my week is going to change though, so I'm going to delete all of that. And on that Tuesday, we'll have Unit 7 review, and then the Unit 7 test the following day. So the test and review, those are special cases. So rather than type out everything here, I'm going to look for the last unit we did when we had a test and quiz. I'm going to just copy and paste all of this and then put it on to here. So now we have the Unit 7. I'm just going to update that. I could just take out the number altogether, that would be easier, but that's just what I have. So we got the review and test day. Then Thursday we are transitioning over to Unit 8, which is coordinate geometry. And on the first day we are doing equations of lines review. And then we'll have a day 2 where we practice. So these need to flip-flop. I'm actually going to, so I'll copy and paste from here, paste that there, and then take the practice day at the top, put it down there for Friday. All right, now my closure is going to look different. And like here, like for closure, I'm just gonna put recap equations of lines. There's a lot that we're doing that day. We're talking about the slope and y equals mx plus b, all those things. We're gonna go into graphing. So there's a lot going on there, and I could list it all out, but I'm gonna go by what I have in front of me as I'm teaching. These are gonna have to flip-flop too. We probably won't have a lot of time for independent practice that day, but the following day, again, it's graphing, so this is going to be a worksheet. And so here, these will flip-flop as well for the materials. So that's all filled in. I just need to go back and get my objectives. So I'll go into my scope and sequence. Here we are in Unit 8. And we're doing all of these objectives. I'm just going to pick one. We're going to focus on graphing. So my objective will now be, if I can, we're going to paste that in. And then this one might not actually have a standard. Equations of lines is really something that predates geometry. It actually goes back into middle school standards, so I don't have a standard to cite here, and I'm just going to leave that alone, and that's fine. I'm not going to get in trouble for not having a standard on this one lesson. It's crucial that we have this review. So now for the warm-up, I'll do a transformations review. I'll pick something recent that we did, just so that we're still in the mode of graphing. And then for my equations of lines review, my warm-up will be, I'm just gonna put equations of lines review. I'm thinking like specifically what will I do that day, but I don't need to have everything completely mapped out now. I just want to have my lesson plans in place so that I have a general idea, and then what problem I'll use and everything for that actual review or for that actual warm-up, I'll figure out as I'm preparing my materials. Okay, so we're done with general geometry. We'll move on to calculus next. So again, duplicate. I'm going to change the title. Now, these templates that I have up on screen, I do have them available in my Teachers Pay Teacher store. I will link it below, so if you want to look into getting these for yourself, you can do that. So I'm obviously doing this at home just for the sake of this video, but typically this is what I do on a Monday morning, or if I get way ahead, this is what I'm doing on a Friday afternoon. Now you can see with my lesson plans from the previous week, I actually left the connection and warm-up blank on here. That's just because I figured out everything for the entire unit ahead of time, and I don't remember exactly what I'm doing each individual day, but it's all prepared and ready for me. So I'm just not getting into the nitty-gritty there. Okay, so my objectives and the titles I'm going to update. Friday, remember, was Unit 3 review. And so the objective there would be I can demonstrate my understanding of Unit 3 topics. That's just my standard. We're doing a test or a review. That's what I'm going to put up as the objective. Okay, so on Monday we have optimization. Then we do optimization practice. Why I don't call it day 2 like I do with my other class, I don't know. It's just what I've fallen into. Then let me see, Thursday we were doing differentials. So then the following day we'll have differentials practice. Now calculus is a college course. So on my scope and sequence I have no standards listed. So in my state the only standards that we have are for Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Since it's a college class, there are no state standards, so I leave them blank. So I go to my scope and sequence. Optimization is right here. I'm going to copy down this objective and then I'll add it into here. And then for differentials, I'm going to just choose one of these. So I'm actually going to leave the connection part blank again just because I know that I have it set up already. I just don't remember what every individual day looked like. I'm going to just make sure that the activities make sense. So Monday is going to be direct instruction, Tuesday will be practice, Wednesday's direct instruction, Thursday's practice. That makes me wonder how this is set up from this previous week. This should be practice day. Okay. So just fix that. And then my closure, I'm just going to have recap differentials. And then we will recap optimization. And then we have independent practice for the assessment, and then we'll have worksheet or Google Form on the practice days. Now calculus is just weird. Usually I use worksheets just because there's a lot of work to show sometimes, like a lot of steps, or there's a lot of funky symbols. And if I'm assessing students through a Google form, it kind of limits me to having to use multiple choice questions because of the symbols. So typically I am using a worksheet. Okay, so you won't notice the disruption in the edit, but I lost power at home, so my internet right now is rebooting. Now my lesson plans, my scope and sequence, it's all on my school's Google account. So my school does not allow us to make use of things offline. So I cannot update anything else, but I'm mostly done anyway for my calculus lesson plans. I have everything in place almost. The last thing I was updating was the worksheet or Google form for the practice. Now I'm actually going to leave it as it is. I'm not going to decide right now. As I go through the week and put things together, that's when I'll decide if it's going to be a worksheet or a Google Doc for sure. So I'm going to close out of everything on my computer. I actually don't need it anymore anyway. So I'm going to go back to my planner on my iPad, and I am going to fill in my to-do list. So I actually have it so that my pink tab up here will go to my to-do list and my orange tab will go to my plans. Now, this is actually what's going on for the current week. I am filming this on Tuesday. I completed all these tasks today, but this is how I break down my week, and this is how I continue batch lesson planning. So on Monday, I get my plans done, then I work on the notes, the practice assignments. Tuesday, I'll do the homework, and then the assessments basically is what's going on for Tuesday. Wednesday, I'll do my answer keys, smart notebook files if I need to. I started batching the smart notebook files by unit. So now instead of creating a smart notebook file for every individual lesson, I create one smart notebook file that has a page of like the warm-up slide for every day of the unit. And I use my iPad now hooked up to my smartboard to teach the lessons. On Thursday, I'll make my copies, and then Friday, I'll get everything scheduled into Google Classroom. So if you notice, my Mondays, Tuesdays, and even Wednesdays are a lot heavier than my Thursdays and Fridays, and that just gives me some buffer. So let's say I get my plans and notes done on Monday, but I don't get my practice done. That actually happened today. So then I'll get my practice done on Tuesday, and eventually at some point I'll get caught up. That's what's nice about having Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday so open and free. Any of these tasks from earlier in the week can get moved. But I have this sequence that helps me not make any serious mistakes. Like, I definitely want to make sure my keys are done before I get to my copies, for example. So right now, I'm currently going through my entire calculus curriculum and updating it and making tweaks because, well, when I first started teaching it was 2020. So I've never had a normal year until now. So I'm trying to make sure that I have everything the way that I like it, and I'm making edits as I go. So I'm going to start by looking at what I need for calculus. So first things would be the notes. I like to zoom way in because it helps my handwriting. So we need optimization notes and differentials notes. And that'll be the first thing that I do because it's the most time consuming. Then we need practice for both of these. And then we need the review. So we're going to have the unit test. And we'll need the test made in order to be able to make the review. So that's a lot going on for calculus. Now, since the review is happening on Friday, if I don't get to the test and review this week that I'm planning for, I'll be able to come to it next week. It's not a big deal. Then the next thing would be geometry. So I'm going to change my color. Now for geometry, I already have everything created because this is the course that I've been teaching for the longest. So for these topics, what I need to have done is the interactive notebook pages. They're done. I went through, tweaked, and updated them. I batched that by unit now because, like I said, it's done. So I'm just updating. So I don't need to do anything here. But what I do want to do is double check the quiz and quiz review. So I'm going to put that on my to-do list because I might want to make changes and redo it. So we'll get that on the list. All right, and then my last one will be general geometry. So for this class, we have a review, a test, we got a practice day, we got a new topic, and then another practice day. So let's start with the big thing. I'm gonna put the test. Oops, that's actually Unit 7. So we got Unit 7 test, Unit 7 review. We'll have the sequences practice to make, which is probably already done. I just want to make sure. Then we'll have the equations of lines notes. And then the equations of lines practice. This is another class that I've been teaching for so long that I know I have stuff for it already, but I just want to go through and just make updates to it and make sure it is how I want it. So that's actually going to conclude my planning. So I have everything figured out, mapped out. I know what I'm teaching and what day. And as I go through, the only thing that might change with my plans is I might change up my practice. I might decide to use a digital activity instead of a worksheet, which is fine. So no issues there. But that's how I sit down and plan my lessons for all 3 courses. As you can see, it does not take a lot of time. Granted, this has been edited down, but normally I'm not talking through and explaining my process as I'm doing it. I'm just sitting down and getting the work done. And so that is everything for this video. Make sure you check out the description box for all the helpful links. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.